If you're looking for games that run well on Steam Deck from the July 2026 releases, this list covers everything from fast-paced shooters and arcade games to RPGs and sports titles. I have tested these games with practical Steam Deck settings, and I will also show you where lossless scaling can make a real difference. So starting off the list, let's get into number 10. Starting off the list is Echoes of Aincrad, an action RPG that gives Steam Deck players a decent experience without needing to push the hardware too hard. At the performance graphics preset, the game runs between 25 and 30 FPS, which is playable but can feel a little rough during heavier scenes. Turning on lossless scaling raises the result to around 40 to 45 FPS, giving you roughly a 15 FPS improvement at the lower end and a smoother overall experience. Up next is College Football 27, which gives you a reasonable 35 FPS on Steam Deck when using low graphics settings. The game does demand a fair amount from the handheld, so dropping the settings helps keep performance around that level during matches. I did not test lossless scaling with this game, so the 35 FPS result comes directly from the low preset, making this a fairly straightforward setup for anyone who wants to play without extra scaling. At number 8, we have Halo Campaign Evolved, which runs at around 25 to 35 FPS on Steam Deck. Using medium graphics settings, performance can move around depending on what is happening on screen, but the game remains playable at these settings. With lossless scaling enabled, the result climbs to 40 FPS or higher, giving you at least a 5 FPS improvement over the upper end of the normal range, and potentially around 15 FPS over the lower end. Coming in at number 7 is Mistfall Hunter, which performs quite well considering its visual demands. On Steam Deck, you can get around 45 FPS using low graphics settings, giving you a fairly consistent experience without needing to make too many changes. Once lossless scaling is enabled, the game reaches around 60 FPS, which gives you a 15 FPS boost and makes combat feel much smoother, especially when you're moving around quickly. At number 6, Denshattack is one of the easiest games on this list to run on Steam Deck since it reaches a steady 60 FPS without requiring any special graphics tweaks. There's also no need to use lossless scaling because the game already hits the 60 FPS target on its own. That makes this a simple pick for anyone who wants to install a July release, launch it, and start playing without spending time adjusting settings. Taking the number 5 spot is Moss, the Forgotten Relic, which also delivers a full 60 FPS on Steam Deck without requiring any complicated graphics adjustments. The game does not need lossless scaling either, since the handheld can already maintain the target frame rate without it. For Steam Deck users, this is the kind of performance result you want from a game because you can focus on playing instead of constantly changing settings to keep the frame rate stable. Up next is Truxton Extreme, an arcade shooter that runs at 60 FPS on Steam Deck with no graphics changes needed. Since the game already reaches 60 FPS, lossless scaling serves no real purpose here, and I would simply leave it disabled. The main benefit is that you get the full arcade experience without asking much from the hardware, which makes Truxton Extreme one of the easiest games on this list to run at a smooth frame rate. Taking the 3rd spot is DragonSword Awakening, which reaches 60 FPS on Steam Deck with a custom graphics setup. You do not need lossless scaling for this one either, because the game already reaches the target frame rate through the right combination of settings. The custom preset gives you some room to adjust the experience around your own preferences, while the 60 FPS result means you can keep things smooth without relying on frame generation or scaling. At number 2, Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced gives Steam Deck users around 30 to 35 FPS using the handheld low graphics preset. That result is acceptable, but it is clearly below the 60 FPS target many players would prefer from an action game. This is where lossless scaling makes a big difference. Taking the game to around 60 FPS, that means you're gaining roughly 25 FPS from the lower result and around 25 to 30 FPS across the tested range. Taking the top spot is 007 First Light, which runs at around 40 FPS on Steam Deck using medium graphics settings. That is a solid starting point for a demanding modern game, but lossless scaling makes the result considerably better, taking performance to around 60 FPS. That gives you a 20 FPS boost and makes the game feel much smoother during gameplay. If you want one of these July releases where lossless scaling has a clear impact, 007 First Light is an easy choice.